Welcome to Syncreate, a show where we explore the intersections between creativity, psychology, and spirituality. We believe everyone has the capacity to create. Our goal is to demystify the process and expand the boundaries of what it means to be creative. We talk with visionaries and change makers and everyday creatives working in a wide range of fields and mediums. From arts to science, technology, and business, we aim to illuminate the creative process from imagination to innovation and everything in between. I'm Melinda Rothaus, and I help individuals and organizations bring their dreams and visions to life. At Syncreate, we're here to support your creative endeavors. If you have an idea for a project or a new venture and you're not sure how to get it off the ground, find us at syncreate.org. Our book, also called Syncreate, walks you through the stages of the creative process so you can take action on your creative goals. We also offer resources, creative process tools, and coaching to help bring your work to the world. So I'm excited today to have my new friend and colleague, Chris McKenna, on the show. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, good morning.
It's great to have you here. And so we met recently at the Creativity Conference at Southern Oregon University, which I've been attending for a few years. It's a great little creativity-focused conference. And we got talking afterwards and found we had a lot in common around creativity and how we sort of approach creativity. So I'm going to introduce you a little bit more here. So from your bio, I saw this phrase, the talent whisperer, which I really enjoyed. He's the chief creative officer at Final Pixel, a global creative studio, as well as the director at Wee Beastie. And I'm going to have to ask you about that a little later. You're a writer and director of films and commercials, originally from Scotland. You got your start with the BBC and then later worked with the Discovery Company. And you also, and what I'm kind of most interested in our conversation today is you teach people and organizations about the creative process. And I think your approach to this is very much in line with what we're trying to do at Syncreate around demystifying the creative process and kind of broadening the boundaries of what it means to be creative, who can be creative, all that kind of stuff. So we've been talking a bit about your own journey as a creative over the years, and I think it really exemplifies this kind of, I don't know, how the creative journey works and a lot of misconceptions. So share with us a little bit about kind of how you got started in the creative realm and where it's gotten you to at this point.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of creative direction. It's a lot of my job. Creativity is kind of a daily part of my job. And been doing that for decades, and I love it and I enjoy it. But I didn't start out like that.
Yeah.
I started out as a technician, and it happened like this. I was in high school, and about at the age of 11, 12, I was told, Chris, you're really good at math and science. You need to focus on your math and your science, and let's drop all your art subjects. You don't need to be doing art. You don't need to be doing any craft stuff and woodwork. Let's get you dropping all those subjects and stick in science. And so I was kind of streamed in high school.
Which is kind of typical in the UK educational system, right? Like you sort of encouraged to find one thing that you're really good at.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And people say to you, what are you good at? And that's what you should do for the rest of your life. That should be your career.
Yeah.
And I was streamed right into doing a degree in computer science. And it wasn't until I was at university and I realized I absolutely hated it.
Right.
And didn't enjoy it at all. And I really wanted to do creative stuff. I wanted to be a filmmaker or a writer. And I thought, well, I guess my life is going to be as a computer engineer. That's what I'm going to be doing. And actually, my first job in television was as an engineer. And at the time, though, I was working for a TV station in the UK. And one day I was walking through the studios, and I heard a noise coming from inside of a studio that I thought was empty and closed. I poked my head in, and I saw about 50 people working on shooting a commercial. And there was like wardrobe people and camera crew and everything. And then in the middle of all that, I saw one guy who was the director, and I saw him saying, "Okay, action." And I had this kind of epiphany, this moment of like, oh my God, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm an engineer. I'm like, I've been pushed into engineering. It's my future. And I went back to my parents' house, and I told my mum my dilemma. I told her I was stressed about this, and how could I be creative? And she said, hang on a minute. And she went up into the attic, and she pulled out all my school reports from when I was 5, 6, 7.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, read this. And they all said things like, Chris is very creative. Chris is really artistic. Chris is a great writer. And I was like, no way. And I think that initial kind of like realignment helped me realize that, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is what I can do. And that kind of started me on my journey towards having a more creative life.
Yeah. And I think that happens so often to us. We get these messages from outside, right? From the outside world, whether it's the educational system or well-meaning people that, want us to have a practical livelihood or something that, try to steer us away from creativity.
I'm a big believer in Joseph Campbell's Follow Your Bliss.
Yes.
I really think that fulfillment in life comes from really enjoying what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are really good at something and you love it, great. But if you're not good at something and you love it, well, for me, that's just the sign to become good at that thing.
Right. Right. And the more passion and energy we feel around any given endeavor, the more we're going to throw ourselves into it fully.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I managed to start pushing my way towards creative work. And I found myself at another very large company, broadcaster in the UK, who shall remain nameless, but they're the BBC.
Nice one.
When I was there, I was still a technician, but they had a creative department that I was trying to get into. And I fought really hard. I was like, I want a shot. Let me in. Let me do this. I can write. And my boss at the time said, well, Chris, yes, you're a creative problem solver, but we don't really see you as a creative. And, the kind of people that we need in this department are the kind of people who, when they're walking down the street, ideas are just falling out of their head. Is that you, Chris? Is that you, really? And I was like, well, I'm going to give it a go. I'll try. And they finally gave me a 6-month attachment, a secondment, so they allowed me to try. And it was really tough. It was really tough. I think I told you before, I had what I called sick shower. Yeah. My boss would be expecting 3 great ideas at 10 a.m.
Right.
And I would get up at 5 and I would stand in the shower just like thinking, I can't do this. This is like just so impossible. I can't do it. And eventually I would kind of squeeze out 3 mediocre ideas. And at the time, they didn't train you. They didn't give you any training or any teach on how to be creative or how to come up with ideas. They just made you feel like, oh, you have to be born with this. And if you're not, you don't belong here. You're not one of the cool kids.
Right.
Look at all the cool kids. They're, wearing the really cool clothes and the shades. Those are the creatives. Mm-hmm. That's not you. And I have to say I fell into books. I fell into books and learning.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the library and I just scoured the place for anything that could suggest that creativity was something you can learn.
Yes.
Because even in one of the most creative companies in the world, in their creative services department, I was made to feel like, no, it's not something you can be taught. It's something you just have to have innate.
Right. Which is
And
exactly one of the myths that we're trying to dispel here. Yeah.
yeah, and I was lucky. I found literature. I started finding studies that showed no, you can teach this. This is
Mm-hmm.
something you can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a big boost from. I There was this guy there who was like the uber creative. He was the guy that got to direct all the big shoots. He was the best writer. Everybody loved him, and he was a really nice guy as well,
Right.
which is always the worst. You're
Yeah.
like, no, he's really nice, but he's amazing. And he would come into the office at middle of the morning, sit with his feet on his desk, chat to people, have a long lunch, and then go home, and then turn out the most incredible work. And I said to my friend Heather, I said, how does he do it? How, it's incredible. He's clearly born a genius. And she said, Chris, no. I know him. He's a good friend of mine. He doesn't do any work in the office. He goes home and he works his ass off until 2 o'clock in the morning every night.
Exactly.
And that's how he does it. And that was like what clicked. That is how it clicked for me. I was like, oh, it's just work. It's just hard work.
Yes.
And that sets you on the path to like, well, what is the work? What is the work that you have to do to be creative? And so I spent the next few years kind of researching that and trying to figure out what it was. And then I started teaching other people because I didn't want anyone else to go through what I'd gone through. So when I came to the US, the BBC sent me to the US, and I came here and I found no one in any of the creative departments really gets much training.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, I'm going to pass on what I learned. And so for the last 20 years, I've been kind of building up a big training and teaching practice with companies where I go in and show them what the work is that you need to do to become creative.
Yes, beautiful. And how do you go about that? And how do you kind of go into these companies? Well, some of them are creative companies, right? But they're not necessarily training people how to be creative, or others. Like, for example, I was just presenting at a conference of spine and neurosurgeons over the weekend. And, out of, some 60 or so people in the room, I asked how many people here consider themselves creative, and only 3 people raised their hands, which was astonishing to me. So these beliefs persist. So how do you go about teaching people how to be creative?
Well, the first thing is the belief.
Yes.
And my favorite stuff to talk about in kind of changing people's perceptions is talking about the brain and talking about the biochemical nature of creativity, which is that we've all got a brain. We all have a brain. The only purpose of the brain really is to make connections.
Yes.
And that's basically all it does all day long. It's the greatest connection machine in the universe. And that's really all creativity is. It's bringing things together that have not been brought together before to create something new. And I just talk quite a bit about neuroscience and about how we all can do this because it's our basic function.
Right. We all have the apparatus, right? It's like I tell people who they're like, I can't sing, well, we all have the instrument, and so if we train, we may or may not be an inherently, natural singer, but we can all learn that and develop that to some extent.
And if you go to a singing teacher, they will tell you, you may think you're tone deaf, but I can teach you.
Yeah.
I can train you.
Yeah.
And that kind of sense of possibility is something that in creativity is, where are the creativity teachers? They don't really exist for ordinary people. And so I kind of show them, look, anyone can do this. You just have to do the work. And then the next step, once you kind of open people's minds to this, the next step is saying, okay, what is the work? Define creativity in your industry, and then let's look at what work do you have to do to be able to be creative. That's the other thing. Definition of creativity is so elusive for so many people.
Yes.
The academic ones are kind of necessarily so abstract because they have to apply to every possible case. And so what I tend to do is within each of the industries and organizations I teach at, I bring them, okay, here's the definition of creativity for you. Here's what it is for you. And for example, in advertising, it's to take two pre-existing ideas and put them together to create something that's completely new, novel, and useful.
Yes.
And once you have that, it's like, okay, that's what creativity is. Okay. Once you have that, you can then say, okay, and now I can kind of figure out what the work is that I need to do to achieve that. And now it gives me an idea of where we go from here.
Yes.
And I think that's a big challenge for most people, because we ask someone to define creativity, like in your spinal surgeons, neurosurgeons conference, you ask someone what is creativity, most of the answers are going to be like, oh, it's ineffable, it's something in the universe, it's lightning in a bottle,
it's something for artists or whatever, and these are people who are collaborating with medical device companies to create these amazing innovations for spinal implants, but they don't see themselves as creative. It's amazing,
isn't it? It's crazy. And I kind of, for me, I just want to evangelize.
Yes.
I want to talk to as many people as possible and say, I talk to my mum. My mum's like, I'm not creative, Chris. I'm like, but you are. You absolutely are. You absolutely are. And there's so much evidence for the fact that you are.
Yeah.
But we kind of have this personal narrative that's been handed to us by society that creativity is just something unique and special, and it's not accessible to everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of my mentors, Ruth Richards, she has done a lot of work and research around this idea of everyday creativity. So we kind of have that eminent creativity, right? The masterworks and that kind of thing. But we're all using our problem solving skills all the time, every day, just to get through life. And it can be as sort of mundane and ordinary as cooking a meal or growing a garden or how we decorate our house or, just navigating the challenges of life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's essential for everybody. It's something that we all need, because I think that it gives you pleasure in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it enhances your life. It makes you feel better, and it also opens up possibilities. And that, so for so many of us, especially in careers, our possibilities are just limited.
Yes.
And we self-limit and society limits. And if you can encourage people to kind of access their creativity, then it opens up a new world for them and allows them to do things that they didn't think they could do.
Yes, absolutely. I think that opening up of possibilities, creativity is correlated to openness to experience, a personality trait, right? And that's, just that being open to try new things, go new places, drive a different route to work, whatever it might be. Yeah.
It's interesting. I came back from a trip recently, and I was installing my daughter's car seat. And for 10 years, I've been installing car seats one way. And it's been kind of fiddly and annoying. And then because I'd been away for a few weeks, I came back and I put the car seat in the car, and I went, oh, I can do it completely differently. And this is better.
Wow.
And I had this moment of inspiration. I was like, what? You just have to walk away from something.
Yes.
You come back to it and you see it completely differently. You see different possibilities. And it's great creativity if you can have somebody externally help you do that, to step away. And that's why when I do training, I love getting these people away from their desk and away from the office.
Yes.
And talking to them, because it opens their minds. And I love to see people excited about their job again.
Yeah.
And excited about their work. But also people who think, well, maybe I can do that other job that I want to do, maybe I can get that creative role that I I didn't think I was suitable for before.
Definitely. So I'm curious, maybe among the people that we traditionally think of as creatives, particularly in the, film, TV, advertising industries, is there any resistance to this? Because as you were describing before, there's certain people that kind of capitalize on this idea that, well, only certain people have it, or you're born that way, or something like that. So,
There's definitely the outer layer of people who maybe are not doing the creative work, and they perceive the creatives as being somehow special. But there's definitely a boundary that you cross when you start working and you start to see, okay, it is just work. And a good example for that is screenwriting.
mm-hmm.
And I know so many people over my lifetime, everyone's got some amazing idea for a screenplay that they just haven't finished writing yet.
Right.
They're just trying to execute. And at the same time now, I know a bunch of real working screenwriters in Hollywood. And the big difference between those two groups of people is that the working screenwriters wrote 10 mediocre screenplays,
right,
one after the other, over the space of many years. And in that time, they became great writers.
mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that they somehow just accessed some latent creativity that they had never really used before. It was because they actually realized what the work is. And that people in the kind of outer layer, they perhaps don't really realize what the work is. They think the work is to be genius, to be creative, to be super inspired. But really, the work is putting pen to paper,
yes,
and bashing the keyboard,
yes,
and start writing. And it's just a moment of realization, I think, that most people have to go through. And I think that's probably the same. That was kind of the same for me, but my growth was through a more abstract area that people didn't know about. Whereas screenwriting, everyone's teaching screenwriting all the time these days, and so I think there was more scope for people to cross that boundary and learn about it. But it just really comes down to work, and you do the work. And I'm always amazed by how well the brain responds to being exercised as a
yes,
muscle.
yes,
And I find myself teaching ideation and brainstorming and trying to get people to have ideas. And I watch my own brain go, oh, how about this idea? How about that idea? How about that idea? How about that idea? And I'm like, it's almost too much sometimes. It's just like a constant stream of ideas. And that's not because I am in any way special. It's not because I am in any way inspired, but because I just practiced and practiced and practiced for 25, 30 years doing this.
You're exercising it. Yeah. So I'm curious, obviously you work with a team of people, and different teams depending on different projects that you're working on. So I'm curious about the team dynamics around creativity and collaboration. That was something I was really interested in my graduate research, and kind of how you go about building and leading a creative team.
It's interesting because in many creative industries, it's the awards that drive remuneration, employment, opportunities. And those awards are tied to individual creative achievements.
Yes.
And so how do you build a team where everybody can be creative and everybody can contribute? And what we did in the agencies that I've started, and I've started a few different creative companies now, and we built just this whole concept that anyone can be creative. We built that into the DNA of the organizations, especially in the company you mentioned, Wee Beastie, which is an ad agency that we've been running for the last 20 years. And we actually wrote it into the company charter. And we were like, look, this is where we come from. You want to come to our company? Yes, we'll win awards, but those awards will be for all of us.
Yes.
Individually, we're a place where anyone can be creative, and we'll teach you how to be creative, and we'll encourage your creativity and reward it within the company. And so that actually turned out to be incredibly exciting for all the people that came and worked with us. We have an incredible reputation amongst our former staff. They just love us, and we did things like we wrote a lot of processes that put creativity into daily work and talked about creativity every day. For example, I've worked at many large corporations who say they value creativity and they want people to constantly be refilling the creative well, but they will not give you any time to walk out of your office and go and take a walk in the woods and get inspired or go to a museum because they're too busy. And they're like, we can't let you do that. And anyway, it's kind of airy fairy, like fake work. Like, so they speak one thing and they act another way. It's
yes, I know. It's like they say they value creativity and innovation, then they actually stifle it with their policies. And as you're saying, we need that time away. We call it sort of creative incubation for those ideas and associations to gather, right? And there are some companies like Google that actually allow people time to step away and work on whatever they want to. But most organizations are so deadline driven and bottom line driven that they just can't bring themselves, right, to do that, even though in the end, it would actually generate more innovation.
And the big reason for that, I think, is metrics. It's hard to say this amount of time spent on creative thinking results in this amount of money at the bottom line.
Right.
And that's a hard connection to make. And it takes a really inspirational company leader to be willing to take the leap and allow it. And I spend a lot of time at corporations saying you have to give your staff time for this. And what we did within our company is we had scheduled inspiration days, and each employee is told, you have to take one a month. You have to.
Yeah.
And you have to leave the office. And then what we did is we said, we gave it a bit of structure and we said, you have to leave the office and go and do something interesting and then come back to the team and give us a 20-minute talk about whatever you did.
Great.
And so we had people going to the Edison Museum in New Jersey, going to art exhibitions, and they would come back and just share the most interesting aspects of whatever it was and maybe what they'd learned.
Yeah.
And so that personal creativity helped kind of build the team creativity. That was one thing that we did. We also had regular ideation sessions, and we really worked at making those super efficient and enjoyable and productive. And most companies, they just can't do brainstorming. They just can't. There's too many reasons why it doesn't work. And so what we did is we figured out, okay, this is the best way to do it. And we made everybody learn the rules, and we did it the same way every time, every couple of days. And so we just had this culture of just constant ideation. And then we combined that with in-house seminars, constant training. We constantly be doing, every week we do a seminar on ideation, creativity, branding, writing, directing, and everyone would come to that. And so there's this kind of constant learning as part of the company culture.
Yes, I love that. And I love that you're talking about culture because it really strikes me, how you wrote it into the charter. You're walking the walk because, and you're building it in so it's an organic part of, not only the charter, but the day-to-day activities of the organization. And I can imagine that is very compelling for people to come and want to work with you.
Yeah, people loved working with us, and our clients loved working with us. We had our mission was to exceed expectations, delight the clients, and inspire clients. And that inspire one was so interesting. We would often get clients come back to us and say, it's funny, working with you guys is kind of inspiring. Yes.
Yes, that's it.
We never told them that was our mission, but that was our goal. And so we also constantly would send our clients things to provoke thought. We never sent out tchotchkes and stuff. We would send people books. We would send clients books on creativity, books on filmmaking, as gifts, and we would offer them seminars on creativity. And that's how I started doing the teaching for clients, is because in the beginning it was just us trying to encourage clients to think more creatively. And that just grew into them bringing us in to actually teach whole teams.
That's amazing.
And yeah, so it's all about inspiration,
Yeah. So I'm curious, of all the projects that you've done over the years, what were a couple of the highlights for you?
So I love directing.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to get hired as a director, especially in commercials. Nobody really cares. No one cares that you're a director. Nobody wants to hire directors. Directors are like really out on their own when it comes to trying to get work. So what I did was I built companies that could go and get the work from the client and then could hire me to direct it.
Got it.
Or that I would get to direct. So that's actors do this. I learned this from actors.
Interesting.
They call it making your own work. So if you're an actor and you can't get hired and no one's casting you in anything, well, get some friends together and go and make a movie.
Yeah.
And be the lead.
Exactly.
And so I took that into the advertising world, and so started ad agencies so I could direct stuff. And so I find the directing an incredibly creative and artistic process. Really, really enjoy it. But it's interesting because it also appeals to the logistical side of my brain, which, I was a technician in my early years in my first career, and, I still have a facility for that. So I like problem solving and creative problem solving. So that combining that art and challenge, logistical challenge, is the best. And I think that the hardest thing that we've a couple of really tough things, we made a TV show in Alaska in the middle of the bush, in the middle of nowhere, like 40-minute drive from the nearest village, not even from the nearest town. And in that world, we shot and produced a TV show that was sponsored by a client. But just all the challenges of shooting in Alaska,
Oh, yeah.
doing aerial filming in a bush plane, being snowed in, having to get everywhere by snowmobile. That was like the best. And I love doing that. And that kind of led on to doing more similar projects. We also did some work for Land Rover that involved us going to Jamaica and Canada and the UK and Bolivia.
Wow.
And in Bolivia, we took a Land Rover, a brand new Land Rover, to the Salar de Uyuni, which is a salt flat at the top of the mountains that gets covered with a little bit of water every January. And when it has that water on it, it turns into the biggest mirror in the world.
Yeah.
Like miles and miles and miles and miles. This incredible mirrored surface surrounded by mountains of salt in this kind of white environment. And that was impossibly difficult because there was a transit strike while we were shooting, and we couldn't get the car where we needed to be. We were in this isolated location. We had clients and a huge crew, and that, for me, that being creative under extreme duress is the best. And it kind of goes back to one of the basic aspects of being creative is needing to have limitation.
Yes. Creativity is bred from constraints, right? Yes.
Constraints, and filmmaking is the ultimate constraints situation.
Yeah.
And you're constantly working within a bunch of ever-changing boundaries and constraints and rules. and you got to, within all of that, you have to come up with something that's new and fresh and interesting. And that for me is great practice on dealing with constraints.
For
Um,
sure.
it's definitely a topic I talk to clients a lot about, is like, so many people, they think brainstorming means blue sky thinking.
Facing the blank page or whatever. Yeah.
And you can do anything. It's
Right.
like, that's the worst. You cannot be creative in that situation.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Well, I love that you're making this connection between um, really challenging circumstances, and again, with these constraints, then you have to really figure out the problem solving skills to navigate the environment that you're in or the constraints that you're dealing with. It kind of reminds me of the idea of the flow state, right? Where there's a situation that is both challenging and engaging, right? And yeah.
That absolutely, that's the best place to be. And I think, in terms of follow your bliss, I
Yes.
feel like achieving flow in anything, in any kind of work, is probably the holy grail.
Yes. It's the best feeling, right?
Yeah, it's so pleasant, so fulfilling, and you really come out of that feeling like you have grown somewhat.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, no, directing and filmmaking really gives you that. It really, I mean, it's also like being on a roller coaster that's got no brakes, going 300 miles an hour, you know. And there's light at the end of the tunnel, but you're pretty sure that it's a train coming.
Right. It's
So, but
thrilling. Yeah.
it's fun. It's fun.
That's great. So we are getting toward the end of time, and I usually like to end each episode with what I call a creativity pro tip. So something that listeners, watchers can sort of take away and implement on their own. And so I'm curious, kind of based on your teaching of creativity, what's one tip or strategy that you would offer to people either just starting out in their creative journey or looking to re-energize their creativity?
Absolutely. There's I'll give two. One that I came across a while ago that I know my clients have used and it absolutely works, which is you print out a picture of a light bulb and stick it on your wall, and it's scientifically proven that you will be more creative if you do that.
Fascinating. I have not heard that one. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
there's a study. And I think the underlying science of it is that you just start to be open to more possibility, because you're like, okay, I'm going to be creative. And secondly, the absolute science underscored, evidence backed taking a walk in nature is absolutely the best place to go to allow your brain to start making the connections. And we're constantly surrounded by technology. We're constantly occupied.
Yes.
And you have to deoccupy yourself. And the best way to do that, and that, I don't know if this has been studied or not, but to me, it's the equivalent of visual white noise when you're in nature. There's so much complexity around you, but it's so random, and there's no patterns really for you to for your brain to lock onto and start analyzing and thinking about. So it forces you to kind of disconnect. And in that process of disconnection, your brain then has the space to start making connections. And like we said earlier, making connections is the essence of creativity.
Yes.
And so I would advise that for anybody. Just get out and start walking in nature.
I love that. Yeah. And again, that's a perfect time for incubation, just to let your mind wander, see what arises, and then you might come back with a great new idea.
Great new idea. Absolutely.
Love
Guaranteed.
that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. And if people want to learn more about your work, where can they find you?
Oh, they can see the stuff we've made at weebeastie.tv. That's our agency. It's WeeBeastie.TV. And then the last couple of years, we've been doing a lot of virtual production, and you can check that out at finalpixel.com.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
So thanks again to Chris McKenna for being with us today. Find and connect with us at syncreate.org and all the major podcast platforms. We're also on YouTube and social media under Syncreate. We're on Patreon as well. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and leave us a review. And we're recording today at Record ATX Studios in Austin with Chris coming in from Los Angeles. The show is produced in collaboration with Mike Osborne at 14th Street Studios in Austin. Thanks so much for being with us, and see you next time.